All right, diving into Søren Kierkegaard. Ever feel like life's a choose-your-own adventure, but the instructions are, well, missing?
Haha, yeah, that's Kierkegaard. Less straight biography, more like a philosophy puzzle box. We're using excerpts from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy on him.
Not your typical philosophy, then.
Definitely not. This guy was obsessed with what it really means to live a good life, not just, exist.
And he did it all with these, like, alter egos, right? The pseudonyms.
Exactly. Different characters, different philosophies duking it out in his books.
We've got the pleasure seeker, Judge William, all about morals. Wild.
And that's what makes him so cool. It's not passive reading. You got to figure out where you stand.
Love that. Okay, but before we get too deep in the ideas, the guy himself, Kierkegaard, his life seems like inseparable from his work. Like a trauma, wealth, family history of melancholy, that broken engagement.
Ah, yes, Regine Olsen. 1840, she was only 18. He ended it almost right away, and it really messed him up. Big influence on his writing, actually.
And the reasons are still kind of murky, right? All this speculation about his own struggles, his dad.
Yeah, total mystery. We know he felt unfit for marriage, convinced he'd make her miserable.
Even tried to push her away, acting like a jerk. Can you imagine the gossip?
Oh, totally. He ended up seeing to Berlin, probably to escape it all. Stayed a bachelor his whole life.
But then in his will, everything went to Regine. That's got to be some serious lasting impact.
Deep connection for her, even after all that. And the years after. Super productive for him. That's when Either Or came out, really kicked off his career.
And then it was like, boom, fear and trembling, repetition, philosophical fragments, the concept of anxiety. The guy was on fire.
It was more than just ideas, though. Kierkegaard was driven to understand what it means to be human, like deep down in the how do we become ourselves way.
Okay, so human existence, intense much. Despair, social critique, anxiety. He didn't shy away from the heavy stuff.
Not at all. And the first thing, the self, for him, it's not fixed. It's a project, something you build, shape throughout life.
Not just being a self, but becoming. That implies we can change, grow.
Exactly. And that becoming, it's central to his view of despair. Not just feeling sad, but failing to become your true self. That gap between who you are and who you feel you should be.
Oh, that's relatable. He talks about different types, like feeling trapped by endless possibilities or crushed by fate. Modern life, much.
Right, so you've got the despair of possibility, tons of choices, potential, but it paralyzes you. You're so caught up in what could be, you end up doing nothing.
Like scrolling online forever but never actually choosing anything because there's always something else.
Perfect example. Then there's the flip side, the despair of necessity. You're trapped by circumstances, zero control, no hope, no dreaming.
Two sides of the same coin, right? One drowning in potential, the other suffocating from lack of it. Both stuck, unable to become themselves.
Exactly. Kierkegaard thinks the key is that sweet spot between them, accepting possibilities but also your limitations.
Blending what you have to do with what you want to do, yeah, easier said than done, I feel.
Oh, for sure. But before we move on, got to touch on his social critique. Harsh on the public, the pressure to conform, almost like he predicted social media.
1800s, way before Twitter and all that. Crazy how relevant it still is. What do you say about our constant information overload, I wonder?
Probably wouldn't be a fan. He saw the press back then as part of this leveling effect. Everyone smissed out, individuality lost in the crowd.
Okay, so how do we resist that? How do we not just become another face in the crowd?
Tough question. And it leads to another big thing for Kierkegaard, anxiety. Now, not just the bad feeling. He ties it to freedom.
Wait, anxiety and freedom, how does that even work?
He saw it as the feeling when you grasp your own potential, all those choices you could make. Dizzying, like standing on a cliff edge.
You knew you could jump, but the risks.
Exactly. That awareness, the anxiety, it's right before any real choice. A wake-up call to your own power to shape your life.
So, not just fear, but realizing those possibilities, good and bad. And you have to choose.
Exactly. And that's what makes it, in a way, good. It's a reminder you're not just along for the ride. You're actively creating your destiny.
I can see that. But the trick is being anxious in the right way, as he put it.
Using that freedom to make authentic choices aligned with your true self.
Okay, so we've got despair, social pressures, this weird, empowering anxiety, intense view of being human. But how does this lead to the famous existence spheres, those different ways of living he talks about?
That's where it's fun. Different approaches to finding meaning, value in life. But not rigid categories, more like lenses to see the world through.
They're often shown as a hierarchy, right? Aesthetic at the bottom, ethical above, then religious at the top, like climbing to ultimate truth.
It can look that way, but it's more nuanced. They overlap. Someone at a higher sphere still carries elements of the others, like those Russian nesting dolls.
Oh, I like that. Each doll with a smaller version inside. So even if your life changes, you still carry those past experiences.
Exactly. And moving between them, it's not automatic. requires a deep internal shift, what he called inwardness. Not just changing your mind, but how you feel and experience the world.
So just understanding the concepts isn't enough. You got to embody them, let them change you from the inside out.
Right. And that transformation, becoming a self, that's what he's guiding us towards, seeing those different paths and choosing the one that truly resonates.
Okay, ready to explore. Starting with, I guess, the lowest, the aesthetic life. What does that even mean in Kierkegaard style? I'm picturing beauty, pleasure, art. Am I close?
You're getting there. But to really get it, we got to meet one of his most interesting characters. A, the young guy whose writings make up the first part of Either Or.
He's the ultimate pleasure seeker, right? All about the next thrill, avoiding boredom at all costs.
Yeah, he lays out his whole strategy in an essay called Crop Rotation. New experiences, new stimulation, gotta keep life interesting.
Very modern, with our instant gratification and entertainment overload, always needing the next big thing.
Totally. But there's a detachment with A. He observes more than participates. Analyzing, critiquing, but never fully committing.
So things like marriage, deep friendships, even a real career, all off the table. Anything that ties him down risks boredom.
Exactly. Threats to his freedom. He knows people have to work, but says don't let it define you. Keep your options open.
Pretty radical, especially for his time. But in all that freedom, all that pleasure, there's a hint of sadness, right? Like he knows it's not truly fulfilling.
You're spot on. And it gets clearer when we look at the two seducers he uses to show the downsides of this life.
Okay, now I'm hooked. Seducers, huh? What do they teach us?
So first, Don Juan, the legendary lover, analyzed through Mozart's opera, actually. He's the pure sensualist, all about desire, not the woman herself, just the conquest.
Classic player, all about the chase, the thrill, but no real connection and no commitment.
Right. But remember, A was all about imagination to fight boredom. Well, the second seducer takes that to a whole new level.
And this guy is
The unnamed author of The Seducer's Diary, last part of Either Or, way more complex and honestly kind of creepy.
ooh, getting good. What makes him different?
He's driven by the chase too, but it's calculated. Plans everything out, gets off on manipulating his victims, controlling the whole situation.
Puppet master, basically. But that's got to get old, right? There's got to be some emptiness behind all that control.
Oh, there is. And even though he tries to convince himself he's not hurting anyone, there are moments when he sees how messed up it is.
Like a tiny voice saying, this ain't right. Even in the depths of that life, a glimpse of something ethical peeking through. Maybe there's more to life than just fleeting pleasure.
Exactly. And to get to that something more, we meet another character, Judge William, voice of the ethical life.
Judge William sounds like the opposite of A. All about responsibility, commitment, doing the right thing.
You got it. He writes these long letters to A in Either Or, basically making the case for the ethical life. True freedom, fulfillment, it comes from embracing responsibility, not running.
A philosophical intervention? Haha. So is he just preaching duty and obligation, or is there more?
Oh, way more. He appeals to stuff A claims to value, like romantic love, shows how the ethical life makes it stronger.
Not just do your duty, but look, this can actually help you experience deeper love, beauty, even pleasure.
Exactly. And one of his big things is choice. He tells A to choose despair.
Choose despair. Sounds intense. Not very uplifting.
Not misery, though. It's more like acknowledge the limits of that pleasure-seeking life, the emptiness, then choose to move beyond it.
Hitting rock bottom and using that to push towards meaning.
Right. For Judge William, it's all about choices that lead to a more unified, authentic self. Commitments, roles, responsibilities, shaping who you become.
So not just rules for rules' sake. It's about needing structure, guiding principles. Something that gives purpose beyond fleeting desires.
Exactly. Marriage is a big example for him. Not just convention, but making love last, creating a shared history, a future together.
Not fleeting passion, but building something that endures, grows with you.
Precisely. A lasting self through commitment, responsibility. That's the heart of the ethical life for him.
Okay, I see the appeal. But doesn't he put too much faith in social norms? Couldn't following rules blindly lead us away from our true selves?
Great point. Big debate around that portrayal. Is Judge William naive? Does he miss the downsides of just doing what society expects?
And is there even more beyond that? Beyond the ethical? We've had aesthetic, ethical. I'm sensing we're about to get religious.
You read my mind. And to explore that, I gotta shift gears, dive into fear and trembling. But that's for part 2 of our deep dive. Back again with Søren Kierkegaard. Last time we were just getting to the religious sphere, so let's jump right in.
Okay, but we got to talk fear and trembling, right? Exploring faith through, well, Abraham and Isaac. Pretty intense stuff.
It is intense. Fear and Trembling, written under the pseudonym Johannes de Silentio, gets into the tricky nature of faith, how it relates to ethics.
Abraham, the guy God told to sacrifice his son, right, raises all sorts of questions about obedience, faith, a higher power.
Exactly. For Kierkegaard, it's a way to examine the limits of human reason and, the radical nature of faith.
So how does Johannes, the pseudonym, how does he approach this? Does he see Abraham as a hero, a villain?
That's the thing. He presents himself as someone who doesn't get faith, struggling with how Abraham could, seemingly violate basic ethics, even if it was God telling him to.
So not giving us a straight answer, a defense. He's more wrestling with it alongside the reader.
Right. And through that struggle, highlighting the tension between faith and ethics, what God seems to ask versus our own conscience.
It's Kierkegaard is saying faith means abandoning right and wrong, just blindly obeying. That's extreme.
Not necessarily. He's not saying reject morality. It's more like confronting what we think we know, admitting there might be truths beyond our human ideas of good and evil.
Okay, that's deep. And he uses those metaphors, right? Night of faith, infinite resignation.
Yeah. Different ways to try and grasp it. One is contrasting those two types of nights.
Break those down for me. What's the difference?
Both are willing to sacrifice, but infinite resignation, they're giving up something, earthly for something that still makes sense to us humanly.
A calculated sacrifice. I give this up, it'll lead to something better, something I value more.
Right, rational. Night of faith, though, goes further, giving up everything, even their deepest values, for something that seems absurd, impossible logically.
So it's not just valuable, it's valuable for something that makes no sense to our minds. A leap into the unknown.
Exactly. And for Johannes, Abraham embodies this, willing to sacrifice Isaac, not because it's ethical, but because he trusts God totally, even when it seems wrong.
Okay, Abraham's the ultimate example. But for us regular folks, how do we even grasp that kind of faith? Seems superhuman.
That's Kierkegaard's point. True faith transcends our reason, a gift, a surrender to something bigger. Johannes, even trying so hard to understand, admits he can't. Left in awe.
So fear and trembling is more about the questions than answers, pushing us to the edge of our understanding, showing the limits of logic.
Right, and that confrontation, embracing the paradox, it's a step towards the religious sphere, recognizing some truths are beyond us, needing that leap of faith.
Mysterious night of faith, this surrender to the absurd. So are we in the religious sphere now officially, or is there more?
Good question. It pushes us that way, but the focus is faith as a personal experience with the divine.
That inner struggle to believe, doubt versus faith.
Yeah, but for the full religious life, gotta go beyond fear and trembling. To his later works, the ones under the name Anticlimacus.
Anticlimacus, he's the one deep into Christian faith, right?
He is. Works like The Sickness Unto Death and Practice in Christianity. He gets into the challenges, the paradoxes of truly living that Christian life.
Okay, so key themes. What does that life look like for Kierkegaard?
One thing, it's not just about intellectually believing stuff. It's a total change, a transformation of the self, commitment to love, serving others, even enemies.
Not just what you think, but what you do. Putting beliefs into action, how you treat people every day.
Right, and Anticlimacus is clear, this is hard. A lifelong process, fighting your selfish side, choosing love instead.
No walk in the park, huh? Sounds demanding.
Oh, it is! He doesn't make it easy. It's a battle against temptations, striving for love and selflessness that almost seem impossible.
So where does hope fit in? We've had despair, struggle, the paradox of faith. Kierkegaard can get pretty heavy.
He can, but even then there's hope. And for him, it's rooted in the Christian idea of resurrection, eternal life.
Not just wishing or optimism, but anchored in something outside us, meaning purpose, even facing death.
Exactly, and that's what gets you through the tough stuff, the struggles, like a light,
Okay, faith, hope, and this intense love, selflessness, demanding vision of the religious life. Can we zoom out a bit? We've talked these spheres as separate, but how do they connect in his whole philosophy?
Important to remember, becoming a self, it's not a destination. It's a journey, always growing, changing.
Not like reaching a mountaintop and you're done. More like a winding path, twists and turns, unexpected stuff happening.
Perfect analogy. The spheres are distinct, but they're like stages, aspects of that journey.
So someone might start aesthetic, beauty, and pleasure, then ethical as they grow up, take on responsibility, then find fulfillment in the religious.
Right, but not always linear. People will move back and forth. Even someone religious can still feel aesthetic joy or have ethical dilemmas.
Like a dance then, shifting, adjusting, finding balance between these different ways of being.
Nicely put. And the key, be present in each sphere, embrace the challenges, learn from them.
Okay, seeing how it all fits together. But before we finish this part, gotta ask about Kierkegaard's legacy. Died young, but his ideas are huge. Why do they still resonate? centuries later.
That's the perfect lead into our final part. Stay with us. All right, back for the final part, Kierkegaard's legacy. Why does this guy, centuries later, still matter?
Yeah, on the surface, it's like 19th century Danish dude, faith and philosophy. Not exactly TikTok trending, is it?
Right. And he's not giving you easy answers either. Paradox, embrace the struggle, never stop questioning. So why does he matter?
Maybe because of that, we're so obsessed with quick fixes, life hacks, self-improvement. He's like, whoa, hold on. Let's actually think about what it means to be human.
Totally. In a world yelling, optimize, hustle, achieve, Kierkegaard's saying, nah, breathe, examine what gives life meaning. What are you living for?
An antidote to all the shallowness, the noise, and he was big on the, subjectivity. Like your own experience matters in understanding things.
Exactly. He challenged the whole objective knowledge thing separate from us. You can't just think about something to get it. You got to live it.
Not just reading and going, huh, neat. It's got to play out in your life, your relationships, the choices you make.
Right. Lived experience, that personal truth. It was huge for later movements like existentialism, phenomenology, Heidegger, Sartre, Camus, all influenced by him.
Wow, this kind of obscure writer shaping some of the biggest 20th century philosophy. And it goes beyond that, right?
Oh, yeah. Theologians, literary people, artists, even psychology. He's talking faith, despair, what it means to be human. It's universal. We all deal with this stuff.
Makes sense. We're all trying to figure out how to be real, find meaning when the world's pushing conformity, all that superficial stuff.
And Kierkegaard, he doesn't hand you the answers, but he gives you the right questions. Not a guru, more like a companion on the journey, walking with you while you figure it out.
So less about correct answers, more about the journey itself, the struggle, the questions. That's being human, huh?
I think so. That's why he's still relevant. Makes you confront the depths of your own existence, pushes you to become who you're supposed to be.
Like he's whispering to us from back then, what are you going to do with this one life you got?
I love that. And it's not just philosophy he's offering, it's a way of being. Engage with your life passionately. What does it really mean to live? Your values, your choices, how do you shape your story?
Those are questions we all face, no matter who you are, what you believe.
Right. So wrapping up our deep dive here, one final thought. If Kierkegaard's right, and we can't figure this stuff out just by thinking, but by living, becoming, what does that mean for how we do philosophy, religion, art? Is studying enough, or do we got to become the things we're learning about?
Whoa. So understanding isn't passive, it's active. You got to do something.
Exactly. Kierkegaard may be gone, but his ideas are alive and kicking, waiting for each new generation to find them, wrestle with them.
So as you go from here, think about what really hit you during this. What connects with your experiences, struggles, hopes?
What sphere speaks to you right now? What challenges do you see in becoming you? And most importantly, what are you going to choose to make this life real, meaningful?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Søren Kierkegaard. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, keep becoming.